Welcome back to Media7, where I'm discussing Christian media and Christianity in the media with Phil Guyon, Lavinia Natoko and the Reverend Richard Randerson. Before we leap back in, Sam Mulgrew has some data in the source.
When it comes to religion, everyone thinks their own is worth two in the bush. Some say you should take the right path. Proselytizing has made some dudes super rich, but many just want to take the high road to the pearly gates. Of the 7 billion people wandering around the place, 147 million, or 0.2% of us, are Jewish. 7% are Buddhist, nearly 14% are Hindu, and almost a quarter are Muslim. But by far the largest group, making up nearly a third of the world's inhabitants, are the Christians. The vast majority of them are Roman Catholic, followed by Protestants and the Orthodox. This map shows where people have migrated to and where they came from. Different colours represent different religions. About 3% of the world's population are migrants, and half of them are Christian, but the most displaced people are the Jews. The denomination split in New Zealand is dramatic. Anglicans, Roman Catholics and Presbyterians each represent between 10 and 15% of us. Together, Christians make up half our population. People of other religions make up 5.4%, but the biggest surprise? 34% of us are non-religious, making New Zealand the 17th most secular country in the world. That has come out of nowhere. The trends you see here are difficult to ignore. It's changing very, very fast.
Now, Phil, that's a third of us with no religious affiliation. That gives you plenty to work with, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's why my job's so tough.
But I mean, quite seriously, there does seem to be some interesting trends in the Christian media sector. In particular, Rima putting Pat Britton on mornings. They've been an evangelical station forever.
Yeah.
And yet they've got, you know, we talked to him and he said, I'm a Christian and I'm a broadcaster, but I don't like being called a Christian broadcaster. I think it's quite an interesting move, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's a great move. Pat's a mate and a very talented broadcaster. He spent many years working at News Talk ZB, and I think he's doing a great job on the new show. And he's involving so many interesting people, Christian, non-Christian, people of other faiths and no faith at all. As
you do with your show, Real Life, as well.
Yeah.
That airs on News Talk on Sunday.
That's right. And we have guests. The brief from News Talk ZB is must be a household name. So it doesn't matter whether they're a person of faith or not. And we have a chat to them before the show and say, is this an area that might be a fruitful discussion or not? It usually makes up a very small part of the overall show, but it's a profound part of the show when it comes. Some of the people that we've had on the show have said, nobody has ever asked me that question before. Nobody's ever asked me before about God or prayer or my faith, and you've asked me respectfully, and I'm happy to tell you. And it turns out that they do have a very deep and significant faith, but it just hasn't been a public thing. So yeah, it's a great, interesting show.
Now, Lavinia, there was another thing in Sam's report. There was the denominational splits are interesting, and then beyond that, you've got the established and modern churches. You have people who, like Richard, don't debate the science. You'll have creationists as well. Is it hard to cater to an audience that is actually more diverse than people think?
Oh, definitely. It's very hard. You can't please them all, as they say, and the same goes with us. You know, we're very unique in the sense that we're interdenominational. Everybody else, all the other churches do have their own papers. You've got the New Zealand Catholic, you've got Spans for the Presbyterians, you've got Daystar, which is a great magazine for the Salvation Army, then you've got Challenge Weekly, which is trying to cover all the spectrums, all the denominations, and so of course, you know, you may do one story and somebody may come to you from another church and say, oh look, you know, why have you done this? But we have an answer. We follow basic journalistic principles. We're fair. We get both sides of the story in everything we do, and we try to give everybody, as I say, it's not easy to please everybody, but we do try to give everybody. You mentioned
Bob McCoskrie before. He's quite a polarising figure.
Yes, yeah, he runs a lobby group. We use him. We don't use him that often. We do use him when we need a story, say for example, example, something that is a social issue or something that's out there, we do use them for comments. But again, in saying that, because we cover so many denominations, we try to have as many people commenting on stories as we can, as possible. But as I said, you know, we do Catholic, we do Anglican, we do Pentecostal. I mean, I suppose a lot of people out there won't even realise how many different denominations there are in New Zealand, but they're so diverse. And as I said, we try to cover as much as we can. We get people writing into us, and a lot of people writing. We have a letter to the editor column where people can, if they disagree with something that we've printed, they can write and have their say. So we try to be fair.
Now, Richard, I wonder whether Bob McCoskrie, I think, is a very able media figure, but I wonder whether there's a danger, from your point of view, of the church's message becoming, when he gets so much airtime, less about social equity than about it being okay to hit your kids. Do you think there's a danger there?
There could be a danger, and I think that's just the debate that we've got to get into. I mean, I was very active in the legislation, the anti-smacking legislation, as it was called, and the different perspectives. I mean, I think sometimes people will look to the Bible and say, look, here's a text that says this, and therefore it's okay to do it. I think Anglican-wise and other churches, we'd say, well, let's look at the wider context. Let's look at the social evidence and the damage to kids and whether it helps child development, families. So you've got to look at all that as the context. Then you go to the Bible and you say, what do you hear? And it's not just a text from 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. It's a basic principle about care, about well-being, but these are the unchanging biblical principles. How do we work them into the context of contemporary evidence in society? So it's a much more complex thing than just saying here's a text, therefore we're in favour.
Now, there's one thing I have to ask you about while we've got time. Shortly before you retired, there was a rather notorious story appeared in the New Zealand Herald, in which you appeared to be claiming yourself as an agnostic. Which, in a way, I think sort of played into any number of prejudices. I think there may have been other churches looking at the Anglicans, they don't believe in anything. What happened there?
Well, I'd been on a Radio New Zealand debate with Richard Dawkins, you see, and I think Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, is the most dishonest book that I've ever read, because his evidence is based exclusively on fundamentalist preachers. He knows very well there's a whole range of contemporary theology that he just doesn't want to get into, because he knows he can't run his argument about God if he looks at the whole range. And so something came up at Christmas, and I got into a debate. I wrote something for the Herald, I think, and I said that if you're dependent on science to prove the existence of God, I'd have to say I'm an agnostic, because I can't tell by scientific proof. That's not where you look for evidence at all. But, you know, the idea of agnostic and bishop in the same article, this was too much for the Herald.
It caused all kinds of
sent out a senior reporter, and we got into things, you know, like a very good reporter, I thought, but I think the article's badly edited, or heavily edited, I should say, so that what it really came out saying, doesn't believe this, doesn't believe this, doesn't believe this. What I actually did believe about many things, it just didn't appear. And I think that's one of the sadnesses of contemporary media very often, that they want to go on sound bites and you know, spectacular things, you know, black-shirted marches along Lambton Quay and all those sorts of things, rather than get into the actual debate and see what's really being said. I mean, the Adam and Eve story, the whole story of creation, as I said, it's not science. It's very similar to Rangi and Papa. Now, no one would say that the Rangi and Papa story was science, but it's a profound story about life, people, relationships, God, spirit, the environment, and that's exactly what the Genesis story of creation is about. It's about life. It's not about science.
Well, we were having, I have to say, very much this debate on my blog today, so I'm sure that will continue. So thank you, Phil Guy and Lavinia Ngatoko and the Reverend Richard Randerson. But before we go, let's dwell on the mass act of faith that takes place every weekend in New Zealand. Not church, lotto.
Radio New Zealand's Checkpoint heralded the $26 million hoo-ha, reporting on an astounding revelation made by statistician David Scott.
Mr. Scott says winning lotto comes down to luck.
By Sunday, we had a winner. 3 News' Tom McRae disguised himself as a barber shop and set a trap for the elusive punter.
You the big winner?
Nope.
Over on 1, Ruth Wynne Williams tried misdirection.
You just had a whole lot of people come in and order that.
That is a big order.
Yeah.
Not 26 million though, is it?
No.
Don't worry, you'll get it next time. As it turned out, the prey revealed himself.
Meet Trevor, the $26 million man. Talking of numbers, he's 34 years old, and wait for it, he earns his living as a supermarket checkout operator. Ka-ching!
Trevor led both the 7 p.m. current affairs shows.
And yes, he just wants to be known as Trevor at the moment. I suggest that won't stay secret for long.
Which is precisely why Trevor Cooper actually winning that much money is such an excellent story.
While Close Up ran a reasonably in-depth discussion.
It's not how's Trevor going to cope with it, it's really how do the rest of us cope with that sort of despair when we're not the ones who win.
Campbell probed deep in an interview direct from the Lotteries Commission's storage cupboard.
And tell me about your life so far. You're flatting, right? Yes, I'm sorry, these are very personal questions, Trevor.
But I'll keep on asking them anyway.
But you're single?
And if it seemed like our news would run anything with the Lotto stamp, stuff.co.nz seemed to prove it by cutting and pasting straight from the press release.
Let it never be said that our media prizes money over morality. And that's our show. Thanks again to our panel and to you for joining us. Have a happy Easter, however you roll. And we'll be back with Media7 at the same time next week. Goodbye.